What do you mean you posted my letter in the family chat? I whispered, shock and tremor in my voice, echoing over the sleek marble countertops of my parents' penthouse in Seattle. My sister's voice crackled through the call. I thought you wanted everyone to see Marisol. My name is Marisol Vega, a 32-year-old UX designer turned freelance writer. Just last week I poured my heart into a personal letter, intended for our parents only, sharing secrets I've never told anyone. I stared at my phone in disbelief, asking the same question again. But there was no apology, no tone of regret, only this cold statement from my sister. You said they deserve to know everything. In that instant I realized the so-called family meeting would become a spectacle. My private words, meant to heal old wounds and express vulnerability, were now public, in our Reina family group chat, shared with every relative, aunts, uncles, cousins. My voice cracked. Why would you do that? I trusted you. Elena, my sister, responded dismissively. You're too dramatic, Miri. I thought you were writing a confession. Everyone deserves to see how you feel. As I sat on the edge of my parents' modern white couch, the chat blew up. Notifications pinged non-stop. My mother, Luciana, texted. You wrote that Ms. Vega has never felt part of this family. Nice to know. My father, Carlos, posted. Let's have a family talk. Some things need truths. I closed my eyes. The letter wasn't just about years of feeling excluded. It also revealed Elena's habit of taking credit for my freelance gigs, and how our parents always praised her successful corporate path, ignoring the support I gave them through difficult times. My hands shook. At 32, I'd built a small but respectable career, writing design guides, tech blogs, and mentoring young creatives, all while freelancing and supporting myself independently. It may not be corporate glamour, but it was honest work. My breathing came in short gasps. The betrayal wasn't just public humiliation. It felt like my family had gaslit me, for years calling me too sensitive, while praising Elena's ambition. By the time I left their apartment, the group chat had exploded. My message history was now public record in our family drama. Embarrassing, raw, painfully real. I didn't remember walking to my car. My body moved automatically, like it was trying to protect me from fully absorbing what had just happened. The sky above Seattle had turned a dull gray, and the air was heavy with that thick, coastal wetness that sinks into your clothes and your bones. I sat in the driver's seat for what felt like hours, my hands still gripping the steering wheel, even though I hadn't turned the engine on. Somewhere between the disbelief and the sting in my throat, a single thought cut through everything else like broken glass. She wanted to hurt me, not by accident, not in a moment of poor judgment. Elena knew exactly what that letter meant to me. She knew I had written it after weeks of therapy, of reliving childhood wounds and talking myself into being brave enough to open up to our parents. It wasn't just a letter. It was a lifeline, an olive branch, and she lit it on fire. I finally started the car and drove without direction. Somehow, I ended up in Capitol Hill, parked in front of a diner we used to go to in high school. Back then, Elena and I would sit in the corner booth, sharing fries and making up stories about the people around us. She used to make me laugh until my stomach hurt. Now, I felt like I was about to throw up. The inside hadn't changed. Still smelled like burnt coffee and old ketchup. A waitress with tired eyes led me to a booth and placed a menu in front of me without a word. I didn't even open it. I just sat there, numb, as the warmth of the red vinyl seat bled through my coat. I opened my phone and saw 36 unread messages. The Reina family group chat had gone from casual chaos to open courtroom. Screenshots of my letter were now being dissected line by people who hadn't spoken to me in years. My cousin Nico, the one who once borrowed $5,000 from me and never paid it back, had the audacity to type, "Honestly, if Marisol feels so unloved, maybe she should stop isolating herself." And then came this gem from Aunt Victoria. Elena was right to share it. Secrets breed resentment. Better to be honest than let things fester. Elena had replied to that one with a heart emoji. That was when I knew. She didn't feel guilty. She felt justified. She wanted to control the narrative before I could. Paint me as the black sheep with a flair for melodrama, lashing out because I couldn't keep up. It was masterful, in a way. Textbook PR manipulation, which made sense, since that's literally her job. I stared at the messages until they blurred together. Then, with a strange, quiet calm, I opened my notes app and started listing every time Elena had crossed a line. There were more than I remembered. And more than I'd ever admitted to myself. March 2023. She submitted my pitch deck to a major client, slapped her name on it, and told me, "You're not the presenting type anyway." Thanksgiving 2021. She made a joke in front of the whole family about me still figuring things out, at 29 while she had just bought a condo in Manhattan. Last month, she asked for feedback on a blog draft, then published my exact edits under her byline in Digital Pulse magazine. And now, she'd taken the most vulnerable thing I've ever written and weaponized it. The waitress came back. I ordered coffee I didn't want just to buy time. My hands shook as I lifted the mug to my lips, but my mind was crystal clear. I wasn't going to call her. I wasn't going to scream, or cry, or beg for an apology. I was going to tell the story myself, and I was going to control every word of it. By the time I got back to my apartment, my chest was tight, but not from panic. From focus. I lit a candle, sat cross-legged on my couch, and opened my laptop. First, I saved every screenshot from the group chat, every passive-aggressive message, every fake concerned emoji reply. Then I went digging through my email archive and pulled the original version of that March pitch deck, complete with metadata showing it was my file. Evidence. Receipts. Timelines. And then I opened a new document. I gave it a title, short and brutal. The Cost of Silence. How my sister turned my truth into family gossip. I didn't write it like a diary entry. I wrote it like an exposé. I structured it, line by line, like a courtroom argument. But I didn't need to exaggerate. The truth was sharp enough. I didn't know yet where I'd publish it. Medium, LinkedIn, maybe even pitch it to one of the design blogs that had previously interviewed me. What I did know was this. If they wanted to make a spectacle out of my pain, I'd give them a spotlight they couldn't control. And I wasn't doing it to embarrass Elena. I was doing it to reclaim the version of myself they refused to see. The version that was done staying quiet. Morning arrived like a dare. Seattle was rinsed clean by rain. And my apartment felt sharper than usual. Edges, corners, decisions. I brewed coffee I wouldn't finish and opened the document I'd titled the night before. The Cost of Silence. If Elena's strength was spinning a narrative, mine would be documenting one. No theatrics. No caps lock. Just receipts and a structure even a hostile reader would be forced to follow. I mapped it like a product flow. Context. Why the letter existed at all. Breach. How it was exposed and by whom. Pattern. A timeline of previous small betrayals we'd all been trained to normalize. Impact. The cost of looking away. Boundary. What accountability means specifically. Not vengeance. Architecture. Then I built a separate folder called Archive. Screenshots. Original files. Email headers. The March pitch deck metadata with my author tag. The feedback document that appeared again, mysteriously, under Elena's byline in Digital Pulse magazine. Every file labeled with date, time, and context. I created a read-only Google Drive locked downloads, enabled view logs. Every breadcrumb had its place. And because I know my sister, I did one more thing. I wrote 3 slightly different drafts of the essay, identical in meaning but each with a single, unique sentence. Draft A, for my parents, a family that confuses quiet with peace grows brittle, not strong. Draft B, for my aunt and uncles, when secrets are dressed up as respect, the damage becomes decor. Draft C, for Elena, there's a difference between honesty and exposure. The first is mutual, the second is a weapon. A canary trap. If any draft leaked, the unique sentence would tell me who did it. I stared at the sentences until they stopped looking like words and started looking like a compass. Then I set up the delivery. A private email to my parents with draft A and a calm note. I'm sharing this because I want clarity, not a fight. Please read before responding. A separate note to the extended family with draft B. You're receiving this because my words were shared without my consent. Here is what I actually wrote intact. And to Elena, draft C with a subject line only she would understand. You asked for transparency. Before I hit send, I texted my friend Arya Chun, an editor at Blueprint Weekly, the design and work culture site that once profiled my UX projects. Can I pitch you something about boundaries, credit, and the line between accountability and humiliation? She replied in under a minute. Yes. Today. If the piece is ready. I could hardly feel my heartbeat. That's how focus works on me. Like someone turned the volume down on every organ. I wrote Arya a short pitch, attached the essay, and added an editor's note. Names changed. Evidence archived. I won't punch down, but I won't blur the truth. My cursor hovered over send. The phone buzzed. A new message lit up from an unknown number with a New York area code. A screenshot of a Slack thread from a PR agency workspace. The top message was from Elena Vega. The text floated under her profile photo like a neat little dagger. Family meltdown today. Draft incoming. Crowdsource messaging? We're going to frame this as concern for her mental health. Underneath, a string of thumbs up and I've got you replies. One colleague added a template crisis line, as if my life were a brand hiccup to manage. I didn't remember sitting down. I was just suddenly on the floor back against the couch, the phone cooling in my hand. Somewhere between anger and altitude sickness, an old conversation rose in my mind. Elena, 21, teaching me how to win a debate class. Control the frame, Miri. If you said it, the other side has to fight on your floor. She wasn't just guarding her reputation. She was about to professionalize my silence. Resolve came in a click. I emailed Arya the essay first, and we agreed on a plan. Publish it under my full name with a clear editor's note. No sensational title, no anonymous sob story. We'd anchor it in the universal. Boundaries, consent, and the ethics of sharing for someone's own good. Arya promised. No clickbait. Just spine. Next I queued the family emails, took a breath, and sent them. A to my parents, B to the Reina list, C to Elena. Within 3 minutes, the read receipts lined up like dominoes. Carlos opened his. Luciana opened hers twice. Aunt Victoria forwarded it immediately. Of course she did. And Elena didn't open the email at all. Instead, 10 minutes later, my drive pinged with a view from an unrecognized Gmail account. Draft C. New York. The unique sentence, honesty versus exposure, now lived in someone else's cache. The canary sang. I took that as my cue to prepare the second part of the response. Terms, not demands, written like a contract. Public correction on the platforms where my work had been misattributed. Digital Pulse magazine. The March client deck. Credited accurately within 72 hours. Written acknowledgement in the family chat. I shared Marisol's private letter without consent. That was wrong. No if you felt. No but she. A boundary stated and respected. No forwarding, screenshotting, or interpretive summaries of my messages going forward. Consent required, always. Restitution. A donation in my name to a local nonprofit that provides sliding scale therapy to young creatives. If we're going to talk about mental health, we'll fund it. My mother called first. I didn't pick up. Then a text, carefully composed. We're willing to talk. Dinner tonight? My father followed with a shorter one. This is unnecessary. We can settle this privately. Privately, as in controlled. I typed back. I'm happy to talk in writing. No live interventions. No pylons. We start with acknowledgement. Before they could answer, Elena texted me a single line. Delete the post and we can fix this. I stared at it, strangely amused. There was no post yet. She'd read the room, not the document. She knew where this was going because it's what she would do in my place. I wrote back, you don't get to set the frame anymore. For the first time in days, I noticed the quiet in my apartment felt different. Not the hollow kind. The clean kind, after you've put every object back where it belongs. I opened Blueprint Weekly in a fresh tab. Arya had added a headline that didn't flinch, but didn't wound. When family honesty is just public shaming. On consent, credit, and saying enough. At the end of the piece, we'd placed a link to resources, therapists' mediation guides, digital privacy basics. Not a spectacle. A scaffold. My hands were steady as I pressed publish. Then I sent one last message to the Reina group chat. No essays, no evidence, no rage, just the boundary, clean and bright. I won't argue here. You can read my words in full. If you have something to say it to me directly, and say it with consent in mind. That's the only way forward. The typing bubbles came and went, a storm held outside glass. And then 3 dots under Elena's name. They paused. They returned. I watched the screen, feeling the exact moment the ground shifted. Not in my favor, but into alignment. Now I thought. We do this on my floor. By the end of the next day, the essay had been shared over 2,000 times. It wasn't viral in the cheap social media sense. It was quieter, more surgical. Screenshots circulated in private group chats. Writers I admired DM'd me to say, "This hit hard." A podcaster I once ghostwrote for tweeted, "When people say we're just being honest, ask whose story they're selling." And in my inbox, an unread message from Elena. Subject line, "Let's reset." I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I already knew what it would say. Something careful, PR polished, likely with passive language and performative empathy. Not because she was sorry, but because she was losing control of the narrative. I was halfway through organizing invoices for a freelance design project when I got a call from my mother. Not a text. A call. I let it go to voicemail, but then she texted a minute later. "Just dinner. No agenda. No one else will be there. We want to talk to you, not at you." A few hours later, a follow-up. 7:30 at the Winslow. "Your father made the reservation. Private room. Just us." The Winslow. A high-end restaurant on Lake Union where they took visiting investors or important people. Definitely not where we ever went as a family. I stared at the text for a long time. Everything about it felt too polished, too coordinated. But I needed to see them. Not to reconcile. To confirm what I already suspected. So I went. Not to reconnect, to investigate. I arrived 10 minutes early, wearing what I call my armor dress. Black, structured shoulders, clean lines. The kind of outfit that tells people you're not here to be managed. The hostess led me to the back, where a sleek private room overlooked the water. My parents were already seated. My father rose when I entered. My mother stood but didn't smile. "Marisol," she said like she was announcing an art piece. I sat, placing my purse beside me but keeping my phone in my lap, just in case. They made small talk for the first few minutes. Asked about my work. Mentioned the rain. Avoided eye contact when the waiter brought wine. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "We read the essay." No apology. No acknowledgement of how it felt to see your most personal thoughts dissected like content. And I asked. My mother jumped in. It was articulate. Passionate. Maybe a little dramatic. There it was again. That word. Dramatic. I tilted my head. It was factual. My father sighed, like I was forcing him into a role he didn't want to play. "Look, no one's saying what Elena did was right. She made a mistake. But publicizing all this, dragging the family into your process, wasn't the solution either." I leaned forward. She didn't make a mistake. She made a move. They were silent. I let it hang for a moment. Then I pulled a small folder from my purse, one I'd prepared in case they asked me to take the essay down. Inside was a printed email chain from 3 months ago. Elena pitching herself as the sole author of the March deck. Her response to the client when I called her out privately. "Marisol's name isn't recognizable. This is better for both of us." Under that, a screenshot of the Slack thread from her PR agency. The one where she brainstormed how to reframe my essay as a mental health crisis. I placed the folder on the table between us, like a centerpiece. "This isn't drama," I said softly. "It's documentation." My mother reached for the folder, then pulled her hand back like it burned. My father stared at it, his jaw tight. "Why are you showing us this?" "Because I need you to understand," I said, keeping my voice calm. "This isn't about one letter. This is about years of being spoken over, borrowed from, minimized, and finally, exposed without consent. And now that I'm speaking back, suddenly it's a problem." They didn't argue. That was almost worse. My mother finally said, "We invited you here because we don't want this to go any further." There it was. Control. I nodded slowly. "It won't. If Elena publicly corrects the record and issues an acknowledgement, not a spin, not a PR draft. Her words. Authored. Accountable. My father shook his head. That's not realistic. I smiled. Neither was watching my pain become a group chat spectacle. And yet here we are. Silence again. Only the soft clink of silverware against plates as the waiter arrived. Oblivious to the quiet war in progress. After he left, my mother tried one more time. We just think things have gone far enough. I looked out the window at the water. It was so calm it looked fake. No, I said. They've finally gone far enough in the right direction. I stood up. My chair didn't scrape. I didn't yell. I didn't flinch. I'm not asking for your permission to tell the truth anymore, I added, taking my phone and bag. And if that scares you, maybe it should. I left them there, frozen, expensive wine untouched, their narrative interrupted for the first time in decades. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I'd finally stopped playing the role they wrote for me. And I had no plans to go off script again. The fallout didn't come the way I expected. There was no dramatic phone call from Elena, no midnight email with subject line "Let's talk." For 2 full days after the dinner, there was nothing. Silence, intentional, strategic, loaded. Then it started breaking. Not from Elena. From everyone else. First came the message from Matteo, my cousin. The same one who joked that the letter drama was better than Netflix. This time he sent a DM. Not public. Private. Hesitant. Hey, I just read your essay. I didn't get it before. I think I do now. Sorry for what I said. An hour later, a similar message from my Uncle Leo. I should have spoken up. I've seen the way they treat you for years. It just felt easier not to get involved. Then came the comment section of Blueprint Weekly. Not the trolls. The professionals. Designers. Writers. Quiet siblings in loud families. One wrote, I never knew how to describe the way my older brother erases my work, while calling it support. This helped. Another. The line about consent hit me in the chest. I've always been called too sensitive for setting boundaries. Thank you. The more it spread, the more I realized this wasn't just about me and Elena anymore. It was about every person who had been gaslit by the word honesty. Every woman whose ideas were stolen, then framed as team effort. Every sibling labeled difficult because they refused to quietly perform loyalty while being fed to the family image machine. Then came the email that made me sit up straight. It was from Leslie Tran, an executive editor at Studio North, a well-respected digital design magazine. Subject. We'd like to commission you. I opened it, thinking it might be a guest blog request. Instead, it was an offer, a monthly column exploring the intersection of personal boundaries, creativity, and ethics in professional spaces. They'd read my essay. They'd read my work before. But this, Leslie wrote, felt like a voice we need to amplify. I stared at the screen for a long time. Elena had tried to frame me as unstable, overreactive, emotional. And somehow, in standing my ground, I had built something new, credibility. Not despite my story, but because of it. That afternoon, I was pulling together my final invoice for a freelance client when I got the notification I didn't expect. A tag. On LinkedIn. From Elena. I clicked cautiously. It was a post. Not flashy. Not defensive. Not dramatic. Accountability isn't branding. It's a process. Last week, I crossed a boundary. I shared something that wasn't mine to share. And in doing so, hurt someone I care deeply about. I've spent my entire career in communications, but forgot that real communication begins with consent. I've issued corrections where necessary, and I'm stepping away from public-facing work for a time to do better. Privately and honestly. No name mentioned. No essay linked. But everyone knew. The first comment? Mine. Thank you for the acknowledgement. Boundaries are how we rebuild trust. Not perform it. No snark. No venom. Just the line I meant. Elena replied within minutes. Just one word. Understood. It wasn't a full apology. Not yet. But it wasn't spin. And for the first time in years, her voice didn't sound like it was talking over me. It sounded like it was talking to me. Later that night, my father sent another text. Just 5 words. We're ready to listen now. I didn't respond right away. I stared at the message, not with resentment, but with a strange quiet power. Not because I'd won, because I'd walked away without burning myself to prove a point. And still, the world didn't end. In fact, it started to open. 1 week after Elena's post, I walked into my favorite coffee shop, an old converted book bindery in Fremont, and ordered a courte-à-deux without checking my phone once. The barista, a woman with bright green nails and a septum ring, handed me my drink and said, "Hey, I read your piece. The family essay. It made me call my sister." I blinked, then smiled. "Thanks. I hope that went okay." She grinned. "Not really. But it was honest." I found a corner table, pulled out my laptop, and opened a blank document. Not for revenge. Not for receipts. Just to write. For the first time in months, my words didn't feel like defense mechanisms. They felt like tools. Tools I could use to build, not just protect. I wasn't thinking about Elena, or the family chat, or whether Aunt Victoria was still upset I didn't come to the reunion. AK refused to smile through her passive aggression in a matching t-shirt. I was thinking about what I wanted now that the noise was gone. Because silence doesn't always mean exile. Sometimes it's freedom. The column at Studio North launched 2 weeks later. The first piece was called "Invisible Labor Isn't a Personality Trait." It wasn't about Elena by name, but the fingerprints were there. It was about what it means to be the emotional backup system for a family or workplace. How expectations pile up on the ones who handle it well, until they either crack or vanish. It took off. Not viral, but sticky. Bookmarked, shared in Slack threads. One reader called it a love letter to boundaries disguised as a workplace essay. And somewhere in that same week, I noticed something strange. I wasn't checking for my family's approval anymore. Not even subconsciously. Not even in the small ways, like wondering if my mother would forward my article to her friend group, or if my father would read it and say, "Well written. Too personal." I didn't care. For the first time in my adult life, their silence was not a verdict. It was a footnote. And my story no longer needed their punctuation. 3 months later, I received a letter. Not an email. Not a message. A real letter, postmarked from New York. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable. Elena's. Inside, a folded sheet of heavyweight paper. Neat cursive. Clean sentences. "This isn't a defense. Just an acknowledgement. I've spent most of our adult lives trying to win the room. And I think I forgot how to be in one with you. You were never the dramatic one. You were the one telling the truth too soon." No promises. No excuses. Just a rare moment of clarity between sisters who once shared fries in a diner and made up stories about strangers. I placed the letter in a drawer, not to forget it, but to remember that not all closure looks like confrontation. Sometimes, it's just knowing you'd say everything the same way again. I no longer needed the family group chat. I muted it weeks ago. I figured if anything truly important happened, someone would call. I started sending holiday cards instead. No essays. Just art I liked. A photo of me and Aria from our latest writing retreat. A quote on the back. "Peace is not the absence of noise. It's the decision not to translate it into self-doubt." The same week, I updated my bio on every platform I use professionally. Before it read, UX strategist, freelance writer, problem solver, daughter, sister. Now it simply said, writer, reclaimer, voice not echo. It wasn't about erasing where I came from. It was about redefining where I was going, and making sure I was the one holding the pen.